Fen Darrow had not expected Wednesday to be the night a man in a $10,000 suit would beg her not to call the police. She had been mopping the back hallway of Crestwood Manor Hotel when the first car pulled up. A black Escalade, no plates, which in this neighborhood meant either a very important guest or a very serious problem. Fen had seen both in her 4 years working housekeeping at the Crestwood. She had learned early that the difference between the two was mostly paperwork. She was 26 years old, 5'4", and 262 pounds on a light day. She wore her dark hair pinned back under a white cap that was slightly too small for her head, and her uniform, the pale blue smock the hotel issued to housekeeping staff, was perpetually one button short of comfortable across her chest. Fen had stopped apologizing for the way she took up space somewhere around her 22nd birthday. She had her mother's broad shoulders and her grandmother's unblinking eyes, and neither of those women had ever once shrunk themselves for anybody, so she had decided she wouldn't either. She was not supposed to be in the East Corridor at 9:47 on a Wednesday. She was supposed to have clocked out 40 minutes ago. But the drain in room 412 had backed up again. Housekeeping had been short 2 people since Tuesday, and Fen had stayed because Fen always stayed. That was the problem with being reliable. People counted on it. She had just wrung out the mop a second time when she heard the voices. The East Corridor connected to the hotel's private banquet suites, which were rented out separately from the main guest floors. Suite E, the largest one, with its own entrance from the parking garage, had been booked under a shell company name for 3 consecutive weeks. Bean knew this because she had cleaned it. She knew the men who used it drank scotch that cost more per bottle than her weekly paycheck, left very little mess and tipped in cash, and that nobody in hotel management ever asked questions about Suite E when it was occupied. She had understood without being told that she was not supposed to look too closely at Suite E. But the voice she heard through the service door was raised in a way that made her stop moving. Doesn't matter what Sable promised you. Sable doesn't run the Eastern Corridor anymore. I do. And what I'm telling you right now is that the product that was supposed to arrive Tuesday is gone, which means somebody in this building talked. A pause. Then a second voice, lower, more controlled. You're saying it's one of mine. I'm saying it came from inside your operation. The timing, the route, the drop window, only 6 people knew all 3. 3 of them are in this room, which leaves 3. Fen's hand had gone completely still on the mop handle. She knew she should walk away. She knew it the way you know not to touch a stove burner. Not because anyone had to tell you, but because certain situations come with their own warning heat. She took 1 step back toward the service elevator. The door to the corridor opened. The man who stepped through it was tall, 6'2", maybe more, with the kind of posture that came not from good breeding, but from decades of being the most dangerous person in whatever room he was standing in. He was older, mid-40s at least, with dark hair shot through with silver at the temples, and a jaw that looked like it had been cut with a straight edge. He wore a charcoal vest over a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbow, and he had the particular stillness of a man who had learned long ago that the people who move first are usually the ones who lose. His name, Fen would later learn, was Stellan Hove. She did not know that yet. What she knew in those first 2 seconds was that he had seen her. His eyes went to her, not with alarm, but with the flat, appraising calm of someone running a rapid calculation. He clocked the mop, the uniform. The service cart behind her. He looked at her face. Fen did not look away. She had been invisible her whole life. The fat girl in the corner, the housekeeper in the hallway. The person people's eyes slid off of like water off a waxed hood. She had spent years watching people decide she wasn't worth looking at, and somewhere along the way she had stopped letting it hurt and started letting it make her sharp instead. She looked back at him, steady, unhurried. "You're not supposed to be in this corridor," Stellan said. His voice was quiet in the way that expensive things are quiet, dense, without wasted space. "You're not supposed to be using Sweet E for whatever that conversation was," Fen replied. It came out before she could stop it. She wasn't sure she would have stopped it anyway. Something moved in his expression. Not quite surprise. More like recalibration. "How much did you hear?" "Fen, enough to know I should pretend I didn't. Which I'm very good at. I've been pretending I don't hear things in this hotel for 4 years. Behind Stellan, 2 other men had appeared in the doorway. One of them, broad, younger, with a close-cropped beard, had his hand resting inside his jacket in a way that was not casual. Stellan didn't look at them. He kept his eyes on Fen. "What's your name?" She thought about lying. She considered giving him a fake name the way you'd hand a stranger a business card he'd already decided to throw away. But something in the arithmetic of the situation told her that lying to this man, specifically, was the kind of mistake that compounded. "Fen," she said. "Darrow, Fen Darrow." He said it like he was filing it somewhere. "How long have you worked here, Fen Darrow?" 4 years, and in 4 years, how many things have you pretended not to hear?" She met his eyes. "More than you'd be comfortable with, I'm sure." The man with his hand inside his jacket shifted his weight. Stellan raised 2 fingers, barely a gesture, just a lift of the hand, and the man went still. "I'm going to need you to come inside the suite," Stellan said. It wasn't phrased as a request. It also wasn't phrased as a threat. It was stated the way you'd state a fact about the weather. Here is what is going to happen next. Fen's heart was going fast, but her face was not. Her face had stopped reporting her internal weather years ago, back when she'd worked the breakfast shift at a diner in Clarksville and learned that showing fear only ever made certain kinds of men more comfortable. She thought about the service elevator. She thought about the fact that she had left her phone charging at the housekeeping station 2 floors up. She thought about the fact that the man with his hand in his jacket was between her and the exit. She let go of the mop handle and walked into the suite. It was not what she had imagined from the outside. It looked less like a crime operation and more like a very serious board meeting that had run long. 3 men seated around a long table. Laptops, paper files, a half-empty bottle of something amber, the remains of a meal that had been cleared to the side. The men at the table looked up when Fen walked in and then, one by one, looked to Stellan. "Give us the room," he said. They went, even the man with the jacket. Fen stood in the middle of Suite E and looked at Stellan Hove and decided that if this was how it was going to go, she was going to go out with her hands steady and her mouth running. "If you're planning to hurt me," she said, "you should know that the drain in 412 has been broken for 6 days, and I've filed 3 maintenance requests about it. My supervisor knows I stayed late to deal with it. Someone will come looking when I don't clock out." Stellan looked at her for a long moment. Then he sat down in the chair nearest to him, slowly, like a man whose knee had been giving him trouble for longer than he wanted to admit. He picked up the glass of scotch from the table and turned it in his hands without drinking it. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. "I'm also not going to pretend what you heard wasn't what you heard. I'm going to offer you a choice instead." Fen crossed her arms. "All right. The man who talked, who gave our route to our competitors, worked out of this hotel. Not as staff, as a contact. Someone who passes messages through the service infrastructure. Laundry tags, mostly. Specific ones." He looked at her. "You would know if someone on the housekeeping staff was handling unusual laundry orders." "I'm not an informant," Fen said. "I'm not asking you to inform. I'm asking if you've noticed anything." She stared at him. "Why would I tell you even if I had? Because the people my product was going to, before it was intercepted, are not people who stop at interception. They'll come back, they'll use whatever channel worked once. Which means whoever talked will talk again. And the next time they move product through this building, the people who live and work here are going to be in the crossfire." He held her gaze. You've worked here 4 years, you know the staff, you know the guests. You probably know more about how this building actually operates than anyone in management." Fen said nothing. She was thinking about Hector on the night-loading dock, who had seemed nervous for 3 weeks. About the laundry cart from the 4th floor that kept coming back with the wrong room tags. About the way the linen count had been off by specific, consistent numbers since the 3rd week of last month. She was thinking about all of it and deciding what to do with it. "If I told you something," she said carefully, "hypothetically, what would that mean for me?" "It would mean you were never in this corridor tonight," Stellan said. "It would mean your 4 years of employment here continue without incident, and that the people you work with don't get caught in something they didn't choose. And if I don't..." He was quiet for a moment. "Then I have to solve the problem a different way. And a different way tends to be messier." Fen looked around the suite, at the files on the table, the laptops, the amber glass in his hand that he still hadn't drunk from. She looked at his hands. The left one had a scar across the knuckle of the ring finger, old and faded, the kind of scar you stopped noticing on yourself years ago. "The laundry tags," she said. Stellan's expression didn't change, but he went very still. "Someone has been swapping the sorting tags on the 4th floor linen. Not randomly, specifically the carts that come back through the East Service entrance. They use a red tag with a black dot on the back, which looks exactly like a damaged standard tag, unless you're the one doing inventory. I noticed 3 weeks ago. I flagged it to my supervisor as a supply issue." She paused. "She didn't follow up? Your supervisor's name? I'm not..." Fen stopped, started again. "I need you to understand something. I'm not doing this because you scared me. I'm doing this because Yolanda from laundry has worked here 11 years and she has a son in 8th grade, and if this building gets caught in your crossfire, she's the one who loses, not you." Stellenhove looked at her for a long moment. Then he set the glass down on the table. "Understood," he said. She told him what she knew. She kept it factual, kept it to what she had observed, didn't speculate beyond the edges of her actual knowledge. She told him about the tags, about Hector's behavior, about a specific date 3 Tuesdays ago, when the East Service entrance had been accessed outside of normal hours according to the keycard log, which she knew because she had been there for an extra shift and had needed to badge in herself. When she finished, Stellan was quiet for almost a full minute. "How did you know to remember that level of detail?" he asked. Fen looked at him like the question was obvious. "I've been cleaning up after people my whole life." "You learn to notice what's out of place." Something crossed his face then. Not quite what she would have called admiration, but something adjacent to it. A kind of recognition. Like he had expected to find a door and found a wall instead, and was surprised to discover the wall was load-bearing. "I'm going to need to verify what you've told me," he said. "That will take a day or 2. In the meantime, you shouldn't work the East Corridor. I work where I'm assigned. I'll have it reassigned." "You don't have authority over hotel staffing," Fen said. "I have authority over more than you'd be comfortable with, I'm sure," he said, and she recognized her own words coming back to her. She left Suite E at 10:38. She clocked out at the housekeeping station, picked up her phone. 4 texts from her cousin, nothing urgent, and took the bus home to the apartment she shared with her older sister on Dunmore Street. She sat on the edge of her bed for 20 minutes before she could actually lie down, her heart still doing something strange in her chest that she told herself was just adrenaline. She had not given him everything she knew. She had held one piece back, deliberately, as insurance. She was not sure why she had chosen to trust him as much as she had. She was not sure trust was even the right word. The next morning, her East Corridor assignment had been quietly swapped for a West Wing rotation. No explanation given. She didn't ask for one. 2 days later, Hector didn't show up for his shift. Nobody on staff mentioned it. Management put someone else on the loading dock, and the week went on. Fen watched the East Service entrance out of habit, the way you watch a place where something happened even after it's over, and saw nothing unusual. On Friday afternoon, she found an envelope in her locker. Inside was a card, plain white, no letterhead. 4 words in handwriting that was spare and angular. "Thank you. Stay careful." No signature. Fen stood in the break room for a long moment looking at it. Then she slid it into the pocket of her smock and went back to work. The second time she saw Stellan Hove was 3 weeks later, and it was not at the hotel. Fen had a second job, not uncommon in her tax bracket, cleaning office suites on the 22nd floor of the Meridian Tower on Friday evenings. It paid better than the hotel and required less interaction with guests, which she considered a feature. She arrived at 6, cleaned through to 9, and usually caught the 9:15 bus home. She was finishing the last office, a corner suite that belonged to some kind of wealth management firm, all glass and leather and things that were expensive in a way designed to be noticed. When she heard the elevator open down the hall, she would have ignored it. Late arrivals to the 22nd floor weren't her problem, but then she heard the voice. "She's still here," someone said. "Not talking to her, talking to someone else." "Then we wait," said a second voice she recognized from the bottom of her spine. Fen set down her spray bottle with great deliberateness and looked at the doorway. Stellan Hove walked in 60 seconds later, and he looked worse than he had at the hotel. Not disheveled, exactly, because she suspected this was a man physically incapable of disheveled, but tired. The kind of tired that sits behind the eyes and doesn't fully go away when you sleep. He was alone. No men with hands in jackets. No files on the table. "You're following me," Fen said. It came out flat rather than alarmed, which was how she preferred to deliver things. "I had to verify something," he said. "You still have a piece of what you know. I need to know why you held it back." Fen didn't insult him by pretending she didn't know what he was talking about. "Insurance," she said. "Against what?" "Against the possibility that you solved your problem and then decided that the housekeeper, who knew too much, was a loose end." Stellan stood in the doorway of the corner office and looked at her. Outside the glass wall, the city spread out 22 floors below them, all light and distance. "You thought about this," he said. "I think about most things," Fen said. "People assume I don't because I mop floors for a living. They're usually wrong." "What would it take?" Stellan said carefully. "For you to not need the insurance." Fen thought about it seriously, because she was a serious person, and she had learned that questions that mattered deserved actual consideration. "Tell me what happened to Hector." Stellan's jaw moved slightly. "He's alive. He's been relocated. He was being coerced. His family had been threatened. He cooperated willingly once the threat was removed." Fen absorbed this. "And the laundry contact, the one receiving the tags, dealt with, not violently." He paused. "Mostly." She looked at him. "You could be lying to me." "I could be," he agreed. "So could you." "We are, at this point, operating on a significant amount of mutual good faith for 2 people who met in a service corridor 4 weeks ago." Fen crossed her arms. "The piece I held back, it's a name, someone who used to work in hotel maintenance. Left 8 months ago. He was the one who mapped the service entrance timing. I know because he trained me on the keycard system when I was new, and the access pattern I saw matches exactly what he showed me." She gave him the name. Stellan wrote nothing down. He just listened, and she had the sense that he was one of those people who retained things completely, who processed information the way a dam manages water, absorbed, stored, released precisely when needed. "Thank you," he said. "You said that in the note already. It bears repeating." Fen picked up her spray bottle again, because the conversation felt like it should be ending, and she was not sure what to do with it if it didn't. "How did you find me here, this building?" "Your employment records," he said simply. "I have access to more than I should. That's unsettling." "Yes." She looked at him sideways. "You're not going to apologize for it, no." There was a pause, not uncomfortable exactly, but charged in a way that Fen noted and filed and did not immediately act on. She turned back to the window she had been cleaning. "You should go," she said. "I still have 2 windows left." Stellan didn't move immediately. He stood in the doorway for a moment longer, and she could feel his attention without looking at it, which was unusual. Most people's attention was easy to ignore. His had weight. "The man whose name you just gave me," he said, "will become aware that someone identified him. It's inevitable." Which means in approximately, he glanced at his watch, 72 hours. "You are going to need to not be somewhere predictable." Fen turned to look at him. "You're telling me I'm in danger. I'm telling you that you handled a delicate situation with more competence than most of my paid staff, and that the consequences of that competence are arriving on a schedule you should know about. And you're telling me this because you're not a loose end," he said. "And I would prefer you remain that way." The silence between them stretched into something Fen didn't quite have a name for. "I have a sister," she said finally. "She lives with me. She works days." "I know. Of course you do," Fen exhaled. "If I ask you to keep her out of this, already done," Stellan said. "As of this morning." Fen looked at him for a long moment, at the tiredness behind his eyes, at the scar on his left knuckle that he had stopped noticing years ago, at the way he was standing in the doorway of this office like a man who had made a calculation and was not entirely at peace with the result. "What do you want from me?" she asked. Not hostile, genuinely asking. "Right now, nothing. I want you to be safe." He paused. "Eventually, if you're willing, I'd like to talk again. You have a particular kind of intelligence that I find useful and rare. You mean I notice things? I mean you notice things. You interpret them correctly. You don't panic, and you keep your mouth shut about what you know until you've determined it's safe to speak." He looked at her. "That combination is genuinely rare, Fen. More than you probably understand." Nobody called her Fen without the Darrow except her family. She decided not to point this out. "I'll think about it," she said. He nodded. He left. She finished the 2 windows. She caught the 9:15 bus. The 72 hours passed the way he'd said they would, with a specific kind of background tensions that she'd learned to sit with. The same way you sit with weather you can't change. On Saturday morning, she moved her sister to their cousin's place uptown with a story about a bug in the apartment that was mostly not a lie. On Sunday, a car she didn't recognize parked across the street from her building for 6 hours and then left. On Monday, her phone rang from an unlisted number. "It's handled," Stellan said when she picked up. "You can bring your sister home. How do you have this number?" "Employment records," he said, and she could hear, barely, the edge of something that might have been amusement. "I want to be paid," Fen said, "if we're going to talk again. Not a lot. Not something that makes me feel like I'm working for you. But I want it acknowledged that what I did had value and that value should be—" "Name a number," he said. She named one. It was reasonable. She had thought about it. "Done," he said. She sat down on the edge of her bed. Outside her window, the Monday street noise went on. Horns, a dog, someone arguing with a delivery driver 2 floors below. "I want to ask you something," she said, "and I want you to answer it like a real person and not like someone who's managing me." A beat of silence. "All right. At the hotel, when I told you about Yolanda, about why I was doing it." She paused. "Did it change how you looked at me?" Stellan was quiet for a moment. "Yes," he said. "How?" "I'd been calculating you as a variable," he said, "a liability or an asset, depending on which way you went. When you said what you said about Yolanda, I stopped calculating. And then what?" "And then I started listening," he said, "for the first time that night." Fen held the phone and looked at the ceiling. "I'll call you Thursday," she said. "I'll answer," he said. She hung up and sat in the quiet for a while. She thought about the life she had. The double shifts, the blue smock with the missing button, the apartment on Dunmore Street. the careful and invisible competence she had built over 26 years of being the person in the room that nobody looked at. She thought about the fact that Stellan Hove had looked at her, not through her, not past her, at her. She thought about how strange it was that the most dangerous man she had ever met was also the first person in a very long time who had spoken to her, like she was worth the full weight of his attention. She was not naive. She knew what he was. She had heard enough in that corridor to understand the shape of the world he operated in, the way violence and money and power braided together in it, the way people inside it tended to end up. She knew that a girl from Dunmore Street with a mop and a second job, and 262 pounds of bone and body and hard-earned survival instinct had no business getting tangled up in that world. She also knew that she had already noticed too much, that the tangling had happened before she had any say in it. And she knew, in the way she knew most things, quietly in the bone, without announcement, that Thursday was going to come, and she was going to pick up the phone. The third meeting happened not by phone and not by accident. He came to the hotel, not to Suite E, but to the lobby, in the late afternoon when the light came through the west-facing windows in long, flat sheets that made the whole place look warmer than it was. Fen was pushing a cart past the side corridor when she saw him standing near the concierge desk, watching the entrance, and she slowed without meaning to. He saw her before she could decide whether to keep moving. He walked over like he had all the time in the world, which she suspected was a kind of performance. She doubted Stellan Hove had ever in his life operated without a precise and ticking sense of exactly how much time he had. "You're on shift," he said. "For another 2 hours," Fen confirmed. "I need a favor. We agreed you'd pay for value." "I know." He glanced around the lobby. "There's a man staying in rooms 6 and 14. He checked in under a name that isn't his. He's been in contact with the people who coerced Hector, and I believe he's here specifically to identify whether the hotel is still a viable channel." "You want me to clean his room," Fen said. "I want you to clean his room and tell me what you see." Fen looked at her cart, at the clock on the wall behind the concierge desk, at Stellan, who was looking at her the way he had that first night. Not as a problem, not as a tool, but as someone whose answer he was genuinely waiting for. 614 is on my rotation, she said. His D&D sign has been up since this morning. I know if I knock and he answers, tell him you were sent for a turndown. Say the request came from the front desk. He won't verify it, and if he's not there, then you have 15 minutes before the elevator logs show a non-keycard access and someone in security might notice. Fen exhaled. You're asking me to do something that could get me fired. I'm asking you to do something that could prevent 3 people in this building from getting seriously hurt, Stellan said, including 2 who have no idea any of this is happening. She knew he was right. She hated that he was right. She knew it wasn't manipulation exactly, or rather it was, but only because the thing he was using to pull her wasn't false. Yolanda was real. The risk was real. The people who would bear the cost of inaction were real, and they were people she had worked beside for 4 years, people whose birthday cakes appeared in the break room and whose kids she knew the names of. If I do this, she said, you owe me more than money. He looked at her steadily. Name it, you tell me the truth, about what you are, what you do, what this actually costs, not a sanitized version, the real version. She looked at him. I will not be managed. If I'm in this, even the edges of it, I want to know what I'm in the edges of. Stellan was quiet for a moment that felt longer than it was. All right, she echoed. She took the cart to the elevator. She went to 614. She knocked and said she was from the front desk for turndown, and the room was empty. And she had 11 minutes in which she moved quickly and deliberately, and noticed 4 things she had not expected to find, and committed them all to memory with the same practiced attention she brought to inventory counts and linen tags, and the particular details that other people walked past without seeing. She reported them to Stellan in the side corridor at shift's end, standing in the blue smock with the missing button, her cart beside her, her voice low and even. He listened. He didn't write things down. He said, "Thank you." Then he said, "Have you eaten?" Fen blinked. "What? It's nearly 8. Have you had dinner?" She looked at him. "You're asking me to dinner. I'm asking if you've eaten. The distinction matters to—" She hadn't eaten. She'd had a bag of pretzels at 3 and nothing since. "The diner on Callum Street stays open till midnight," she said. It's not the kind of place you—" "I'll meet you there in 40 minutes, Stellan said. He did. He sat across from her in a vinyl booth and drank black coffee and ate a piece of pie that he didn't finish, and he told her what she had asked for. Not everything. She understood there were things that would never be told, that certain information was too dangerous to pass across a diner table regardless of trust. But enough. He told her the shape of his organization. He told her how he had come to lead it and what that had cost, in a voice that was measured and without self-pity, but not without weight. He told her about a brother who had died 12 years ago in a situation that had been preventable, and how that had changed the way he ran things, and what he had built in the aftermath. Fen drank coffee and ate scrambled eggs and listened with her full attention. When he finished, she said, "Why are you telling me this?" you asked. "You've had people ask before and not told them." "Yes." He turned his coffee cup slowly in his hands. "You're different because I'm useful." "Because you're honest," he said. "Not performatively, not strategically. You're just honest. It's very unusual in my world. It's unusual in most worlds." He looked at her. "And because you were right when you said you wouldn't be managed. I don't want to manage you. That's new for me." Fen looked at him across the table, at the tiredness that was still there behind his eyes, but slightly less than before, at the way he held his coffee cup with both hands like a man who was cold in a way that wasn't about temperature. "I'm not going to pretend I know what this is," she said, "or what it's becoming." "Neither am I," he said. "I'm a housekeeper from Dunmore Street. I know. You run a criminal organization, I'm aware." The arithmetic of this is very strange," Fen said. Stellan Hove looked at her across the scratched vinyl table of the diner on Callum Street. With the coffee going cold between them and the rain just starting up outside, and the particular quietness of a man who has spent decades being the most frightening person in every room he enters, finally sitting across from someone he wasn't sure how to classify. "Yes," he said, "it is." Fen picked up her fork. She ate the last of her eggs. She thought about Dunmore Street, and the blue smock with the missing button, and the 4 years she had spent being invisible. And she thought about the envelope in her locker, and the unlisted number in her phone, and the way he had said, "I stopped calculating," in a voice that had cost him something to say. "Okay," she said. "Okay," he repeated. "The arithmetic is strange," she said. "I'm still doing the math, but I'm not done yet." A slow, careful thing crossed his face. Not quite a smile, but close enough. The kind of expression that didn't come often and didn't come cheap. Outside, the rain picked up against the diner windows. Inside, the coffee was cold and the eggs were gone, and 2 people, who had no business being in the same room, sat across from each other in the warm, ordinary light, and let the evening go on a little longer than either of them had planned.